Hi everybody, this is Ryan Cozy, and I've been receiving a handful of questions in regard to a number of initiatives that are going on with respect to the Church of Western New York. And one in particular that I've been getting a lot of questions about is just a number of different churches desiring to potentially partner in the church planting arm of the Church of Western New York. And so I wanted to take a few moments to address those questions. And I realize this isn't a hyper-professional video, but I think it will get information out, and it will be something that can seek to clarify some open ends that people are having. So in terms of what the Church of Western New York is specifically, some folks have not been a part of these discussions right from the beginning, but to basically, just as an overarching statement, the Church of Western New York it's a gathering of churches that have been coming together over these past number of months, and some would even say years, going back to the start of an initiative that took place about 8 years ago, when a number of churches were gathered to go through some renovation material, a material called renovation. And over the last number of years, some partnership has really developed and grown, and more churches have come in. Some have departed, but more have come in. And what we have begun doing is partnering and identifying ourselves just because of the relationships that are here as the Church of Western New York. Now, does that mean that every church within Western New York that is within Orthodox Christianity is a part of our group? No, not yet. It's not. And we want to be very candid about that. We desire to grow that, and we desire to develop that through the process of time and relationship. And so, but at the same time, as we've been desiring for that, God has brought us a greater and more diverse base of partners. And so that group has begun to identify itself as the Church of Western New York. Now, specifically within the Church of Western New York, there have been a key group of partners over the years that have seen a handful of churches planted in the last 8 years. And by our count, we've actually seen within this group, although we acknowledge that other churches have been planted, absolutely so, and we're very grateful to the Lord for that. But within our partnership network, we've seen about 25 churches planted over these last 8 years. And we hope to plant more churches. And the excitement for us is those 25 churches actually represent a church that is born with a DNA that wants to see every man, woman, and child have repeated opportunities to hear, see, and respond to the gospel message of Jesus Christ. And it also represents a benchmark that one church for every 50,000 people in our region has been planted with that sort of a DNA. And believe it or not, eight and a half years ago, that was actually a goal that was thrown out there from a friend of ours. And so we hit that goal. And the Church of Western New York had gathered together at the beginning of this year and said, well, what if we desired to plant churches more effectively together with greater intentionality than already exists? And so we've begun to go on this journey over the last 9 or 10 months. And every time that we've met as a large group, we've kind of come back to this idea. Does it seem to us that the Spirit wants us to move forward in this partnership initiative to the next step? Well, where that has gotten us is we had, in our last meeting in September, we did a general ask to roughly 60 people that were in attendance at the Vine Wesleyan Church. And by our count, we handed out a handful of letters that proposed and asked. And within that ask, about 35 responses happened. And so a number of folks had some questions. And so as we began to clarify those questions, one of the things that became clear was how much money has already been raised. Well, within the subcommittee alone, we can see roughly $170,000 plus has been raised among 8 churches going into 2017, meaning that churches are going to apply for funding in 2017 that they want to plant, the churches that want to plant. We have right now about $170,000 committed, but we're also looking to grow that pocket of financial help. And so within that general ask as a whole, this letter that was handed out, we asked, we gave a couple of different ways that people could partner. They could partner through prayer, but that they could also partner through financial partnership. And so we had just done a general ask where we thought, hey, maybe a church could do $12,000 a year at the high end, or $1,000 a month, or maybe they could do $5,000 a year, or roughly $417 a month. Maybe a church could do $3,000 a year, or $250 a month. Maybe a church could do $2,400 a year, or $200 a month. And maybe a church could do $1,200 a year or $100 a month going into 2017. So we tried to position the asks to be achievable depending on where a handful of churches are. Some people, the feedback was actually, why didn't you ask for more from a handful of churches? And honestly, we've never done this before. And so we felt like we wanted to put an achievable ask out there with the relationships that we had. And so people specifically asking, how can this group help in terms of financial partnership? That's really a way that we see organizations and churches being able to help us. The high end, we think, hey, if a church could give $1,000 a month, that's a crazy amount of financial help, and we'd be ecstatic about that. Maybe it's $5,000 a year or $417 a month. Maybe it's $3,000 a year or $250 a month. Maybe it's $2,400 a year or $200 a month. Maybe it's $1,200 a year or $100 a month. And the reality is there are some partners that they may not be able to do that much. They may be able to do less. And so we said, hey, put an amount in there that you think you could commit to. Now, in terms of clarifying that, people have said, hey, do we give monthly or do we give annually? There's all sorts of flexibility in that. But here's what we would ask right now with where we're at in the process. We're trying to close out these relational asks by December of this year. And that means we've got to have a handful of meetings. But I would say this, if you're interested in helping out, would you reach out to me by email, rkozey@thechapel.com. I would love to make sure that if you're interested, that I do everything that I can to close that communicative loop with you so that if you feel like you can make a financial gift, we want to make sure that that's available to you and that we're talking directly. Don't feel like you don't have direct access to communicate with me as I try to communicate with our subcommittee. Because we want to grow the financial commitments for sure, but we're also incredibly thankful that we have what we have in the pot right now to begin to move forward in 2017, and we welcome any and all above that to desire to partner with that. We're going to be reaching out to a lot of groups that had already filled out this form and said, hey, we need to talk with our elders, we need to talk with our leaders. That's totally fine. But we've also been reached out to by a number of other churches that have said, hey, how do I get involved in this? In my mind, this is how you get involved with this. This is how you begin to ask some questions. And so I pray that it's clear and it's helpful. And I pray that as you all prayerfully consider partnership in this end, that you won't feel like you can't reach out to me. I'd also put out there that my office number is 631-2636, and you can reach me at extension 227. I pray that this is helpful. God bless you, gang, and be well.